Good day, everyone, and welcome to Eckerson Group webinar today. And I am Jed Somerton, the Vice President of Consulting, and I'll be your host and moderator today. Today, we're talking about the rise of data and analytic platforms, a unified platform that will bring together many of the capabilities that organizations need to develop and deliver sophisticated analytic solutions quickly and efficiently. Deliver those with high value within an organization, rather than trying to put together multiple tools from disparate environments or different vendors. Unified platforms help pull that together and make your operations much more comprehensive and efficient. So now let me introduce our panelists. Wayne Eckerson is an internationally recognized thought leader in business intelligence and analytics who thinks critically, writes clearly, and presents persuasively about complex topics. And you'll hear evidence of that in just a moment. He is a best-selling author, sought-after consultant, and noted speaker, and he has written 2 books, The Secrets of Analytical Leaders and Performance Dashboards, both of which are posted on our website, and you can get them through Amazon as you see fit. And he's also authored dozens of reports and hundreds of articles during his 25, 30 years in the field. David Johnson is joining us from Domo, and he is the Director of Solutions Consulting for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And he helps customers to realize value and derive insights from real-time data. He also oversees proof of concept and proof of value efforts for Domo. And he's based in London, where his work spans sales engineering, post-sales, technical consulting, and implementation, and also business and marketing analytics and content development. Prior to Domo, David worked at Apple, where he managed field marketing, planning, and delivery initiatives. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics with a minor in business strategy from Brigham Young University. And you can tell from that background that he's got equal parts of business savvy and technical savvy, which is what analytic solutions need today to deliver value to the business. So as far as our agenda goes, Wayne will start our session with some background and strategic insights, and David will follow and include a demonstration of a unified platform. We'll hold some time at the end for your questions, so don't hesitate to use that Q&A window. So now I'd like to just turn it over to Wayne.
Thanks, Jed. Thanks for that great introduction. I'm really eager to talk with all of you in the audience about UDAP, Unified Data and Analytics Platform. So let's get into it. Let me give you a little background on how I came up with this new acronym. Not that you need another one in our space, but in the 25 years I've been tracking BI in this industry, I've come to realize that what business users really want are a couple of things. They want one place to go for data. They want trustworthy data and reports, because if they don't trust the data, they don't trust the data in the reports, they're not going to use them. And they want tools that are flexible and easy to use, that they don't require a lot of training to use to get the kind of view of information that they want, be able to drill down, pivot, sort, even add a column or 2. Really, if you boil it all down, I think that's what the majority of your business users want. Now, there's a minority of super users that have a whole different set of needs. But on the whole, the majority of users want these 3 things. And your business leaders, those folks who are footing the bill for BI tools and other types of tools, what business users want, what business leaders want is one platform, one vendor, one throat to choke, with built-in governance and security to make sure people are only seeing the information they're authorized to see. And ultimately, they want a solution, a tool set that's faster, better, and cheaper. So hold on. Yeah. If you can deliver all that, you get happy users. So the only problem is that data analytics technology has proliferated to a huge degree. And there's an incredible amount of confusion out there, and an incredible amount of tools. And a lot of organizations end up being their own systems integrator to bring all these tools together, and that has huge amount of costs and overhead associated with it. And this fragmentation reminds me of the story of Humpty Dumpty, who had a great fall, and all the king's men and horses couldn't put him back together again. Well, we see that every day in our organizations with multiple ERPs, multiple data warehouses, multiple ETL tools, data quality tools, BI tools, Viz tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. which leads to data and application silos. And Jed will attest to this, that every client that we go in and help, it's just suffering from huge amount of silos. And usually it's our goal to help them figure out a way to consolidate those things or link them together so that users can access that data easily. So in my more humorous side, I always ask myself this question: how many data engineers does it take to screw in a light bulb? Of course, data engineers are a really up and coming field and job category these days, along with data scientists. And the answer is really, I don't know, except that it takes most companies many months and millions of dollars to stand up an integrated data and analytics environment. Essentially, as I said earlier, they need to be their own systems integrator to integrate the proliferation of tools and silos that they have. It makes you wonder, what if we could think outside the box and come up with a way to eliminate all those silos? We confront that every day when we work with clients in the trenches. So this prompted me to write a report, because what I've seen out there is that a lot of vendors, including our sponsor today, Domo, have recognized the pain that I've just talked about, the proliferation of tools and data silos, and have said, you know what, given the advent of the cloud and the processing technology that we have today, we can unify all this into a single environment. So I call that a unified data and analytics platform. It's a tightly integrated all-in-one platform designed to accelerate time to insight and increase ROI. And that sounds good for business users and business leaders. Now, truth be told, we've been moving along this line for a very long time. In fact, I think UDAP is the culmination of a long history in the evolution of business intelligence, from purpose-built tools in the 90s to suites of tools in the 2000s to self-service discovery tools in the last decade. Now I think it's all coming together, not just the BI side, but also the data side. So if you look at the data side, you can see that over time, we've also seen a consolidation of functionality into a single platform or tool set. Things, the ability to capture data, model data, integrate and prepare data, create a data lake, data catalog, data virtualization, data quality and cleansing, master data management, so on and so forth. All of these things are being brought together into a single all-in-one data platform. At the same time, the same thing is happening on the BI analytics side. We're pulling reporting, dashboarding, visual analysis, and even advanced analytics, alerting, natural language queries, planning, even simulation and forecasting into a single analytics platform. Now you can see where this is headed going forward from 2020 on. These two platforms are beginning to unify into a UDAP. And this obviously has many benefits. It provides a one-stop shop. You no longer have to source tools from many data providers, many BI and analytics providers. You get it all in one place from one vendor. You can support all your users. You know, we used to say, even at Eckerson Group, you need a different tool for every different type of user. Well, these platforms now provide all that functionality and modality in a single platform. Fast time to insight, and that's because if everything is integrated together, it's governed and makes it easier for administrators to stand up an environment, provide access, controlled and governed access to users to all the information that's available in that platform. Ideally, the best of these UDAPs are open and extensible, because the last thing you want is to get locked into a single platform that's rigid and doesn't evolve as fast as your needs. So it's tantamount that these platforms have open APIs and have a community of partners surrounding them that are building extensions to the platform. And as I said, built-in governance, and if all these things are happening, it delivers high ROI. So vendors are approaching this in many different ways. There are purpose-built UDAP, which come closest to the goal I just mentioned in the prior slide. Domo, our sponsor today, is one of them, and a few others. There are other vendors, typically bigger ones, that have packages of tools that they've lightly integrated. And there are others, even bigger vendors, that provide all the tool sets, but rely on you pretty much to pull them together from their platform marketplace. What I have seen is that when you first hear about UDAP from the vendors who provide them, it seems almost too good to be true. And I've been a skeptic for a long time. And the thing that changed my mind was actually talking to customers of these types of tools. So Traeger Grills is one customer, and this is a quote from the CEO who's just really astounded the first time he opened up a mobile app and had all of his information that he needed to run the business on his fingertips in real time, integrating data from dozens of sources across the company. And that really was transformative for that organization. Another is Broadcom, where the CIO needed something to pull together a lot of different data from different applications in a quick and easy way that was also scalable. And he didn't want to be able to, he didn't have budget, to hire a large team to do that kind of work. So UDAP satisfied his needs to do a lot more with less and more quickly. So from an architectural perspective, this is a very high level conceptual architecture. You see some of the main components of the data platform, connectivity to almost any data source and application in your environment and beyond. The ability to virtualize connections so you don't have to pull all your data into the UDAP platform, which typically can act like a data warehouse. But most vendors know that you're not going to get all your data in there, especially restricted data that must stay on premises. So these tools, at least the best of them, have a data virtualization layer to go pull the data in real time wherever it resides and have a cache to make that perform as well as users need. In the middle is a data refinery that processes that data from its raw state to a trusted integrated state, and also provides preparation tools for self-service users to take the end state data and manipulate it for their own use cases. On the analytics side, you see a data access layer typically provides a semantic view of information that they have access to. The tools and applications from reporting, dashboarding, self-service, and advanced analytics as well. Machine learning, all that's on the analytics side. And below we have, most importantly, unified management layer of services, especially around governance, that allows users to only access the data they're authorized to see, but doesn't limit what they can see. In other words, they can access as much as they want and need to and are authorized to. So all of this is built on a common services layer in the cloud, so it's very scalable and it can run multiple workloads simultaneously to support whatever kinds of processing is taking place on the platform. Some of these considerations I've already mentioned. There's always this tension, we've had this for ages, between best of breed and all-in-one tool sets. A lot of departmental users and business users are attracted to best of breed, frankly, the shiniest new object that looks and feels a lot better, more modern, faster, and better than what they're using already. That's not to say UDAP can't also be best of breed, but it's certainly an all-in-one play. So you have to understand the culture of your organization and the politics involved in selecting tool sets. You have to make sure that the platform, the UDAP platform, scales sufficiently. The last thing you want to do is have an all-in-one platform that limits query performance, ETL loads, and things of that sort. I mentioned it has to be extensible to evolve as quickly as users' needs change. And probably in this day and age, it needs to be complementary to what users have in place. And that's a real strength of these UDAP platforms because they have everything, all the data functionality, all the analytics functionality, along with things like alerting and integration capabilities like data virtualization. So if a company has a standard BI tool, well, maybe they use it more for the data capabilities. If they have standard data warehouse, maybe they use it more for the BI capabilities. It has to be open, as I mentioned, with open APIs so that partners can build around it and on top of it. And it must integrate with an organization's existing security frameworks and support compliance regulations. yes, there is this perennial debate between all-in-one versus best of breed, but we are seeing unequivocally a trend towards convergence that counterbalances the fragmentation that we've seen for decades in our industry. I think we've learned our lesson that fragmentation only gets you so far. And if you really want to use data as a competitive advantage, you need convergence of your tool sets and functionality. So I believe UDAP really does provide game-changing benefits from time to insight, cost to manage, ease of use, and ease of governance. So with that, we'd like to do our first poll. Hopefully I've given you a little primer on UDAP, piqued your interest in it. How many unique BI and data tools exist in your organization? 1, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 25 plus. All right, 2 to 5. That's pretty consistent with results that we've seen in the past. That's a lot better than it was 10, 20 years ago, where 6 to 10 ruled, but we still have at least a quarter of our respondents in that category and a very few in the higher category. I'd like to turn the stage over to David, who will give you a little peek at what a UDAP tool looks like and what it can do for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Wayne. Really appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share out my screen and we can just start to dive into it and kind of walk through a little bit of the history of Domo. I want to build off Wayne's presentation, kind of talk about the genesis of Domo and how we arrived at the point we are today. What I see is some of the benefits of having an all-in-one integrated data platform. What are some of the pitfalls? What are some considerations to make? And then also just how we see different use cases that I feel are somewhat uniquely enabled by having an all-in-one platform. That yes, you could do a lot of things with other tools and you'd string them together and so forth. I mean, technically, I guess you could build everything from the ground up in-house, which is always an interesting question to get from prospects or from people that we're working with, where it's like, well, I could just build this entire thing myself. You absolutely could. I think it'll take you a long time, and there's some off-the-shelf technology that could kind of help your organization quite a bit. First and foremost, I think a lot of people, especially if they've been exposed to Domo kind of earlier in our history in the early 2012, 2013, 2014 era, you'd see a lot of this, what you're seeing on screen, which is charts, graphs, analytics, right? And there's lots of tools out there that could draw the charts you're seeing on screen. We feel we do a decent job, and there's different views we can do of analytics and so forth that we could potentially dive into. But I want to talk about how things have evolved since then and kind of how Domo has grown into this unified data analytics platform. So first off, Domo's genesis, our CEO was, and some of you I'm sure already know this, but ran another company called Omniture that became Adobe Analytics. Domo was essentially the tool that he wanted as he was running that organization. So we started as really an executive tool to understand what's going on in a business. Since then, it's grown to become this democratized, massively scalable end-to-end platform, right? So we said, okay, to support the types of decisions I want to make as an executive or what I want to see as I'm running my business, we need to go ahead and get data to do that. So we started building connectors, and we realized that as we got connectors, we needed to prepare the data and cleanse it and kind of ETL it inside the system. So we've been building that over the years. And then it's evolved since then to the point where we realized that, you know, people have data all over the place in the organization. Maybe we don't want to import that. Maybe we just want to kind of get that where it is and import it from there and virtualize it in a sense, or create this fabric that weaves data across an organization. And so I think the place to start kind of talking about Domo and what we're seeing on screen here is going to be this data warehouse view, which shows all the information that's fed into the environment. What we're seeing here, this is essentially a view of all the data that Domo is touching inside of this particular environment. This is our demo environment. We have 3 billion rows of data indexed across 113 unique data sources inside the tool. And this is what I mean, where it's to support kind of these end-level metrics. Data's all over the place. We want to connect to it and pull it in from where it sits and import that inside the tool. And part of that effort was creating different mechanisms for connecting to data, building an entire connector library where we've constructed, 700, 800, 900 connectors to pull information from any sort of system and import that into the tool, right? To just be able to click this, import, have that data indexed inside of Domo there. And from there as well, like I said, data sits all different places inside of an organization. And you can see with these outer rings here, this is data that exists in a Microsoft SQL Server. It's what we call federated information inside of the tool, where we leave that where it sits and query it directly at the source. It could be a sensitivity thing. It could be, initially as this started with federated, it was data is too sensitive to be in the cloud. We want you to query our Oracle or our SQL server on-prem and leave the data there and visualize it inside of Domo. Great, so we built that use case. We've seen somewhat of a shift towards, I have all these SaaS tools and information all over the place, but I now have something like BigQuery or Snowflake with a massive cache of data that's 40 terabytes. Whilst I could move that into Domo, and that's completely a possibility, and we have customers doing that, and I'll show you some massively scalable examples here. Sometimes it makes the most sense to leave the data there, to query it at runtime, because it's for a niche or smaller data set, and we don't need to necessarily import all that into the tool. So I think a big point, and Wayne touched on this a little bit, is that flexibility with varying architectures and varying sources of data inside of Domo. I did want to show, and what you're seeing in this middle ring here, just from an explanation standpoint, this is information that's combined across different sources. So Domo does have a drag and drop ETL tool. We have a SQL ETL tool. Again, I think there's the conversation around best of breed versus kind of the all-in-one platform. You talk to some of the sales reps, different individuals at different companies. I think everyone believes that they're best of breed at everything, perhaps. But I think being realistic is, the Domo ETL tool handles 90 to 95% of the use cases. It can handle a big throughput of volume inside of the tool. But there are organizations that are already employing Informatica or Talent or kind of these larger ETL purpose-built tools, and having the flexibility to just integrate directly into those is a very compelling thing to be able to do. I did want to shift gears a little bit and just show a little bit of what it looks like inside of our internal environment. So let me jump over. This is an environment where I need to tread lightly, given that it is our production environment. But I did just want to show this Domo data warehouse view right here and the volume of data that we have inside of our own organization. Give us a quick refresh. So we've indexed essentially 640 billion rows of data inside of Domo. And that's what we have running to use Domo to run Domo. That's the volume of information that we have inside of our organization. We've connected to 63 different data sources. We have thousands of data sets inside the tool, and obviously every employee of our company is a user inside of Domo. And you can see what that looks like on this screen right here. Right, and some of these data sources that we have combined across so many different systems, and you can kind of see that updating in real time here with the information flowing into a single data set. I think a big theme that I wanted to touch on is the benefits of having a unified platform is seeing both governance, permissions, lineage, kind of these different principles that could exist at a data or an ETL level, trickle throughout the entire platform and give visibility to every other feature inside the tool. I think is a huge benefit inside of Domo, or any unified analytics platform for that matter. So if we look at one of these, so let me just pull open one of these data sets here that has a massive lineage. So this is a data set that we use for analytics. Again, I'm not going to surface the data. I just want to show this lineage view right here and surface that. But this is, I would argue, one of our more complex lineages that we have that feeds information from hundreds of different data sets inside of the tool. And you can see that right here where this is information. This is the final data set that we have here. And you can start to get visibility across every single data set that's feeding into this one. Now, one thing to point out is that I'm not an administrator inside of this environment, this domo.domo.com. I'm a regular user, so a lot of these are private data sets that I don't have access to. I can still see kind of lineage flowing throughout and what's comprised this final data set that's been shared with me. And only a subset has been shared with me. You can see that there's permissions applied to this. But having the power to see the full context of the information that's flowing into this. We have MySQL databases, we have Excel sheets, we have information from Salesforce and other SaaS tools, all flowing into this final data set. If I click on one of these, partner SFDC certifications, I can see who owns this data set and I can request access, and there's workflows that we can have there. Again, this is all because it's this unified analytics platform. If this was all ETL happening in a separate tool and you wanted to dig in and grab one of the underlying data sources that feeds that final view that you have, is it a support ticket inside of ServiceNow? Do you try and track down the developer or something along those lines? Or do we have a governed, visible workflow inside of a single environment? So it's kind of just a different frame on things from that standpoint. And I think that principle kind of trickles when we have connectors, when we have data preparation, when we have all these different concepts in a single platform, that can trickle and bubble up to the visualization layer as well, right? So as I click on any of these visualizations here, I'll just click on this sales trend card here as an example. So I can see exactly when the data set was updated. I can click and see the lineage of this specific data set. I can see who owns this and reach out to that individual if I have questions around that. But even something like leaving a comment on it or reporting something that goes directly back to the data owner responsible for this data set, and also surfacing a warning on the visualization to say, hey, feel free to dig into this data. You can click and drill in and use it as necessary, but take it with a grain of salt because there's this issue going on. Now that's an example of manual reporting, but even if the data is just out of date, right? Maybe there was some sort of error as we're importing. I mean, everything, because we have this unified platform, if I jump into just an example of an arbitrary data set here, and then let me look at one of these data flows where we have some of the transformations happening inside the tool. As you click into one of these, you can see a history tab of when that data flow last ran, how long it took, when it was successful, when it failed, and I can see a map of successes and failures here. So if there is some sort of issue with data import or a mismatched SQL column in a data flow or something along those lines, that'll bubble up to the visualization and say, we still have this most recent version of data, but it's going to be out of date because you have this issue earlier on in the chain. Whereas I believe to get that kind of cadence that you have throughout stringing together different systems, some of that data is naturally lost when you're combining different vendors, right? Maybe you have permissioning where you have, on the BigQuery database, you have built-in permissions and users can query that via OAuth or something along those lines. But as we get to, an abstracted visualization tool or something along those lines, maybe not all that metadata is flowing throughout the tool there, and you lose a little bit of that visualization, right? Even something like, I want to show just a page where we can use Domo to monitor Domo. Something like this, where I can see, what's behind schedule, what needs attention, how's the health of my overall content, both from users creating things, the data that I have updating and flowing into the system, kind of different views of information because we have this unified tool and I can get a view of the health of data within my organization as it relates to Domo. And again, keep in mind, this is both data that exists inside of Domo, but it's also data wherever it sits inside of an organization, as long as it's cataloged, right? This doesn't have to be in our database. It could be elsewhere. You could have data in a BigQuery, Snowflake, on-prem SQL Server, MySQL database. Doesn't matter as long as you quickly just index that inside the tool and then apply governance and permissions to that. That's one point I wanted to make, is just that of kind of unification of features and metadata flowing throughout the tool from a governance standpoint. A lot of customers, I've been working on the pre-sales POC solution side. I was formerly consulting at Domo doing implementations. I've seen a shift where, initially it was, I am a, marketer, or I have a specific use case inside of my department. I need a unified tool to stand things up very quickly and do analysis on my own, right? Domo's great for that because you have a quick time to value. I've done proof of concepts for Black Friday where we met with a retailer in Singapore, and in 2.5 weeks, we have sales information, inventory information flowing in, productionized, and you're able to adjust promotions on the website based off of that just 3 weeks prior when they couldn't do that previously. So you do have a very rapid time to value because it's all integrated. But one thing to point out too is that, as it's shifted from these use cases to more of a lot of the prospects that I'm working with and customers interested in Domo, there has been a growing shift from CIOs, CTO, kind of the IT organization and data organization within companies to provide that governed and actionable layer inside of a company, right? So I want to talk a little bit about one of the use cases that I'm just working on right now with a major fashion retailer. So they have, naturally, I think if you look at the poll, they're kind of on the later end of that, where, a company this size with, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 employees naturally has 10, 20, 25 visualization and BI tools across the company, right? And when we think of the term shadow IT, right, you've heard that term quite a bit where it's, I spin up a rogue Redshift database and I'm caching all my information there, or I, buy my own license of Tableau and I'm doing my own thing off in the corner without IT visibility or something along those lines. When we think of shadow IT, a lot of what we've seen is it's really what's happening is there's Excel files being edited and emailed around organizations or dropped on a SharePoint or something like that with varying version control, version 1, 2, 3, 4 on someone's hard drive, out of date copies. You don't really have visibility to that. Maybe it's not encrypted, and there's just information kind of flowing about in Excel because it's the path of least resistance. Like when you see a sidewalk, but then everyone's cut through the grass and then you just see dirt on the ground like that, right? And so one of the things that we can provide, or any unified data platform can provide, is a democratized environment that is governed and understood by IT, right? Self-service is a big term. You know, the Eckerson group has talked quite a bit about that. I'm sure you see that all over the place as far as just self-service analytics and business intelligence. We want to put power back to the business user. But what does that actually mean? Does it mean configuring a chart and changing a couple things? Or is it more complex than that? Is it uploading data and augmenting data sets? Is it doing ETL? Obviously, it depends on the sophistication of your users. But I think there's a balance to be had. And what we've been working on with this fashion group is, you know, a lot of tools, yes, you can absolutely create your own chart or something along those lines. But what they were looking for is these users also want to be able to upload data and merge that with official, sanctioned, and certified data sets within an organization, right? And doing so, they want to maybe reclassify SKUs or maybe add information in a different way or introduce a new data set into a centralized platform, do their own analysis, and then share that with others inside the organization. Historically, the way to do that has been perhaps Excel, right? Exporting information, doing some sort of VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP for those of us in the newer versions, and sending that around. But with something like Domo is you then have the ability to give users access to do things such as light transformations inside the tool or upload data or those kind of things, and then merge that with certified data sets, right? There's this spectrum, which I think we see, which is on one end you have a, let's think of it as classic BI, where you have a central BI reporting team that creates reports and sends them to people, or has some sort of portal where you view them, right? Or, and then if you want a new one, or if you're a business user that wants one, you can get in line, you can submit a request, that change is made, and that's propagated out, and then you have that, and you can kind of repeat that cycle, right? It's clean in a way where you have one central team making things, but you lose that democratization and agility and kind of enabling the business in a certain sense. On the other end of the spectrum, you have kind of a, you know, call it a free-for-all, where anyone can build anything. We don't know if the metrics we're looking at are accurate or not, and there's just information all over the place, right? But an important concept is kind of striking that balance there, where depending on the sophistication of our users, we want to be able to give them the tools to do the analysis that they need to do. But we also want, as an IT or data organization, understanding of how that data is being used. Is it governed properly? Is it accurate? Are we reporting the correct numbers? And that's where you have things like this concept of certification coming into play. And you'll see these check marks as strewn throughout Domo, where it could be a card, it could be a data set, it could be a transformation that is a certified metric, either within within the entire organization, company certified, or if I built something and want to submit that for certification, I could do it for a certain department, like operations or sales, and have our own workflows there. And so finding that balance where users, because it's an integrated platform, I can upload an Excel sheet, I can connect, you know, a data set or a Google Sheet into this tool. I can merge that with a master sales database and provide my own lookups or maybe additional information for budgets and targets and those kind of things. I can build my own visualization, which perhaps just I have access to, that's on my private page, or I can share that out with other individuals and then request certification, and that becomes kind of a sanctioned or official metric within the organization. So I think that's something where, say that you have another stack where it's, I have a data lake, I have a data warehouse, I have an ETL tool, I have visualization tools. All data is going to be moving into this pristine data lake or data warehouse or data mart. And then from there, users can visualize it. There's a little bit of that agility lost where it's, you know, it's more of a process to spin information and certify that and get that in there to make it for downstream visualization. We're having this agile approach where I can go out and kind of iterate and prototype things and then certify that. We've seen that very successful within companies, and kind of a shift towards that is truly democratizing data and making it self-service. So again, I think one last point that I wanted to emphasize that I think Wayne brought up that is very important is that of open and extensible platforms, right? The thing about this, a tool like this, is that you do not want it to be closed off. You don't want to go all in with some vendor and then not realize that you can't use other plugins or tools or those kind of things. Customers have varying architectures. I've seen Domo deployed as the end-all be-all data platform for smaller organizations, SMBs, kind of corporate-sized companies. And then for larger companies that have everything, Domo could be this final, call it a last mile or an actionable layer that sits across as a fabric across all these other data sources. So having different deployment options is big, but also being able to hit APIs, script inside the tool, build custom visualizations, and also leverage Domo data elsewhere. I mean, I have customers that use Domo for connection and ETL, and then sit Power BI on top of it, querying Domo directly to power the visualizations, governed, certified information, querying directly to Power BI. Obviously, personally, selfishly, I'd prefer, I think Domo's a great visualization tool, but I just want to point out that there's different ways of doing things. Domo has all these capabilities and customers have seen how to use that differently there. So that's about it for me. I think, Judd, I'll pass back over to you, but looking forward to the Q&A portion and answering any questions that we have around this specifically. Thank you, everyone.
That was great. Why don't we, Jed, why don't we show the next poll? We have 2 questions here, if you could answer these, fairly straightforward. Would a UDAP product make sense in your environment? Do you have a UDAP product in your environment today? So would a UDAP product make sense in your environment? 47% said yes. That's good. And in fact, David did a great job explaining the different places a UDAP product could work in a company. It doesn't have to be all things to all people. It could be just your ETL tool, it could be your BI tool. And one thing he didn't mention was advanced analytics. I know Domo has quite a extensive advanced analytics capabilities. Number 2, do you have UDAP product in your environment today? Majority or plurality said no. So that's kind of what we expected here. There was one question I had for you, David, which was you showed some very powerful lineage capabilities. And that's really one of the huge benefits of having a totally integrated environment, not just an integrated data warehousing environment, but an integrated virtual environment. And I was wondering, maybe you could show this if you can. To what detail can you show how the data is transformed or not? You showed all the sources. Can you drill down and see how the data was transformed?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So the example that I showed right here, now a lot of these I don't have access to. I really have access to just this final piece right here. If I click on one of these right there, this would be the data flow. So we have the data sets, which are these individual squares that we have here. The circle where you see that is the actual transformation. So what I can do is, let me see if there's one that I do have access to inside here. Click on lineage here. So one of these right here, this is where I can see that data flow right there. I can see the direct input, inputs, outputs, etc. And if I click on that specific arrow right there, that'll open up a new tab with the details of that specific data flow, where I can see the history of it. But then if I click in the edit view, I should be able to see exactly what that transformation is.
Wow.
So this one we have basically it's preparing the information for scripting and adding some constants inside of there.
So, that's really impressive. I mean, we've spent years and years, decades really, trying to integrate these diverse BI and data environments with metadata. And lineage is kind of the canary that represents all of that. If you can do lineage to this degree, that means you have a truly integrated, governed environment. And if you have those things, that's what delivers, value quickly and ROI. So I think that one shot says a lot about the power of UDAP. And, I wasn't really aware of the certification capabilities that you've got built into the tool. Do you have any examples from clients you've worked with of how they've actually built workflows behind that? It's one thing to be able to stamp something with a certification icon, but the hard work is something that you probably can't do inside the tool unless you have workflow-based capabilities that people can configure for each type of governance flow. But do you know how people are using that in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the capabilities is that you can, I don't think I'm an administrator in this environment here, you can set up exactly what that certification looks like. So you saw that there was the company one, and then we have the different departments and so forth. And you can set up the chain of approvals that goes through inside of the approval center inside of Domo. and kind of certify that. Or if I click on this certification area right here, ones
So
that I've
you have
submitted
built-in,
versus.
yeah. So you have built-in
Yeah,
workflow into the tool. Yeah, you've got
exactly.
everything built into this tool. It's amazing.
Truly unified, I suppose,
Yeah,
almost accidentally over the last 10 years, right?
yeah,
But what I would say is that as far as use cases go, the one that's top of mind that I would say is that retailer use case, where we have a massive, it's a table coming out of Snowflake that's 10 billion rows, which is all SKUs, transactions, stores, regions across the globe for all the products. And there's different groups inside of this retailer using that. And they want to classify things differently based off seasons. So the SKUs are changing from season to season, but what they're doing is they want to align those across different seasons and do kind of their own ad hoc classification and sometimes add targets and other data. Oftentimes this is in Excel. So one thing we didn't show is the ability to just upload data directly in Excel. We have an Excel plugin where it lives in the ribbon toolbar. You can just click upload data and it'll push data to Domo or query it, or, whatever you want to do there. And the workflow looks like you have all these other derivative data sets that have been augmented by business users that are not certified. So you're driven towards the certified ones. That's what surfaces in search results. That's what you see with the check mark inside of the tool. But we have these other workflows inside here that have that as well. And interestingly, one final point on that is if I'm looking at one of these cards, like sales trend by day as an example, and I want to create my own version of this, oftentimes what we'll do in Domo is just click the Save As button, right? Create my own version, call it David's copy, right? And as I do that and save that, and then I can go in and edit and change this however I'd like, it is a non-certified version of that information. So I've created a new copy of that. And then what you can see is that it's not certified. And then I can go in and change whatever I want from that standpoint inside of that visualization right there. And then if it's something that, I feel would be useful broadly beyond just me, because it's only I have access to it, I can then submit it for certification, publish it to a page, or whatever workflow my company has for getting information out.
that's beautiful. I've run into situations where people want to add on their own data to certified data set, which is kind of what you just showed, although you might be showing manipulating the certified data set. So in other words, it's a hybrid report. Half of it's already been certified and displayed elsewhere in another report, and then half of it is new. That's a tough use case, right? Where you certify half of the report.
Yeah, that's what that retailer is doing. And I think the place that surfaces is you can see that in the lineage. Because from a lineage standpoint, you would see a certified data set that is being combined with a user-owned Excel sheet or other, data set from wherever. Those are then merged into a net new data set that's not certified unless it's been submitted through that process.
Right. Yeah, back on the lineage, there's one question I had. For the distributed data that you access through your virtualization server, can you also get detailed views of the lineage on those data sets as well as the transforms?
Yeah, so as it stands right now, we don't have any endpoints for kind of pushing lineage information to Domo. If the transformation is done in Domo, which are oftentimes data that's inside of Domo historically, we can also do views on federated data or data that exists is virtualized outside of Domo. If it's a view across, say that I connect 4 Snowflake tables and I merge those together into a new data set, I can see the lineage of that, but I don't see the lineage before when it got into Snowflake. So maybe there's an option, down the road where we could look at opening up APIs around that or something around so you can publish it, but we can't pull that information. And that's kind of the entire thing is because it's unified, we can at least see what's going on inside of our world. Whereas if you're a smaller piece of the puzzle, it's so difficult to get information of where data is coming from when it's just fed to you via a REST endpoint out of some other tool or database, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so you may have shown this, but it seems like one of the powerful things is that you not only provide governed access to information, you allow users to go connect and query data and create their own versions of it. So that assumes that every user has its own personal workspace, right? So if I log in, what do I see? Do I see a kind of a portal of all the data sets that are available to me, as well as ones that I only can see that I've created?
Yeah, great question. So when you log in, so in this data warehouse view, this is all data sets that I can see and have access to. You'll notice like when we looked at this example here, There's a lot of private data sets. Those only show up in the lineage view to just inform you of where the data is feeding from for that data set that you do have access to. It doesn't show up in the data warehouse view. But just as far as workspace goes, so you'll see the data that you have access to.
So
when
this
you
is
click
all
on
the
the
data. So that little graphic, that animated graphic, that's all the data you have access to.
Yep. And we do have obviously the more traditional view where it's a list of data sets that I can then filter off of different criteria, right? As far as who owns it, the type of data set and so forth. And you can kind of see all this information here. And then from a workspace standpoint or kind of a dashboard standpoint, every user has their own overview page, which is a personal page. So favorites, overview, these are personal pages. Beyond that, these are pages that can be shared amongst users or locked and not certified, but locked and shared company-wide or something on those lines. So I can create, if I want to create a new page, you know, David's example, by default, that new page is only going to be shared with myself. And then I can add content to this and then share it out with other users or Active Directory groups or whatever population that I'd like to, and they can get access to the data that I've added to this.
Yeah. So again, very, very powerful when you finally integrate all the components of a data analytics environment.
To do an analytics environment, you have to have, DBMS, you have to have big data clusters, you have to have virtualization, you have to have ETL, including textual and natural language processing. Which ones of those are in Domo and which are those that you unify by capabilities across Domo?
Yeah, this is a great question. So essentially what it's saying is that there's very specific capabilities that we need. Which ones are inside of Domo, which ones are outside of Domo. So Domo is a managed SaaS service. Behind the scenes, I mean, it'd be interesting, we could spend a whole nother session on the, I'll just bring this up briefly, the Domo architecture diagram, as far as everything that's going on behind the scenes, information that's being processed and so forth. For those of you that want to screenshot this and have it, go ahead, it's also available on our website. But there is a lot going on behind the scenes as far as the managed database and big data distributed cluster aspect of what's going on, right? We deploy on multiple clouds. We have Azure, we have AWS deployments. We have an MPP database running behind the scenes that can power, the data that you're seeing, where we have hundreds of billions of rows of data inside of a single customer environment. And we aim for very rapid and quick performance time with query caching, all sorts of things like that. So those aspects of the database, I wouldn't think of it as a traditional data warehouse per se, where you are manually spinning up different clusters and doing things along those lines. It's essentially for some customers that have and need those capabilities, Domo is a high-speed cache of data where you can store information that is then being queried and having calculations and business logic baked into the tool there. So just looking at this question real quick, data virtualization, yes, that's a capability. That's that federated data access here where we can virtualize data sets coming from external tools. Again, we're not a pure, Denodo or some data virtualization platform like that, but these capabilities exist to be a fabric across all the organization and then couple that with other capabilities inside the tool. As far as textual ETL analytics, we do have, I would say the 80-20 rule as far as what we're able to do from an ETL standpoint, but we also have partners and plugins in an ecosystem where, if there is a software that's specifically good at social media sentiment analysis, you can write the data out to Domo and then bring that back in and process it through external tools inside of Domo. And just one screen that illustrates that point well that I'll pull up in this ETL view here that's been big is this, you can put freeform scripts and so forth inside here. But look at this write back tile is probably the most interesting tile that's happened here in the last few years, where as I drag out inputs and have, ETL that I'm doing and scripting things inside of Domo, right? What we can do is also just write that directly into external systems from Domo. So I can use Domo's connectors, pull in information, aggregate across, 400 Instagram and Facebook accounts and have that in a central place, write that out to my cluster where I want to process that separately and do a specific algorithm on, and then bring that back into Domo or query it directly at that source and then visualize that inside the tool. So again, we're not going to be able to do all the different things from that standpoint, but the hope that I have is that this opens the mind as far as the different capabilities and where you can see Domo fitting into your infrastructure.